Today is Sunday, Chof Zayin Nisan Tafshin Ayin Gimel. We're in Torah Menachem Sefer Maamar Tafshin Yud Aleph Tafshin Yud Beis. In the Maamar of Shiurim Beis the Chag of Shavuos Tafshin Yud Aleph. Alpayim Shana Kod Matera Libri Shel Olam. We are on page Tzadik Vov, Ois Dalid, chapter 4. In short, the Rebbe quotes the Maamar Chazal, which says that the Torah preceded the world by 2,000 years, and asks, what's the concept of time? The creation of the world. The Torah, Alpayim Shana Kod Matera Libri Shel Olam. The Torah preceded the world, the creation of the world by 2,000 years. Asks the Rebbe, what is the meaning of that statement before creation? If time is also a creation. Time is created just like anything else. So therefore, what does it mean 2,000 years before the creation of the world? There was no time then. And in simple terms, or rather in short, the Rebbe says that Alpayim refers to two Alephs. Aleph Chochma, Aleph Bina, which means I will teach you Chochma, I will teach you Bina. So in other words, Torah precedes the world, the creation of the world by the two levels of Chochma and Bina. The world, the world is created through the Midas, right? Sunday is Chesed, Monday is Gvura, and so on and so forth. Torah is Meichin, the intellectual faculties. So it precedes the world in the sense that it comes from a higher level. We learned that from the Pasuk in Mishlei, which says, it refers to Torah as Hashem's delight, Shashuyim, delight, Yom Yom, 2 days, 2 days, Elef Shanim, Hashem's day is 1,000 years. So from 2 times Yom you learn Alpayim. Alpayim is Alefcha, 2 Alefchas, Chochman Bina. In short, that's what the Rebbe says.
Very short.
Yeah. So the Rebbe goes on and asks a question. And in this pasuk in Mishlei, the pasuk actually enumerates 5 aspects in connection to Torah.
Would it alles be Alefim, not Alpayim?
It's a drash. It's not Pirish and Pashut, obviously.
Not mathematics.
Sorry?
How do you connect the Alpayim?
Because there's another Chazal that says it's actually based on a pasuk from Eve. A'alefcha chochma, a'alefcha bina. I will teach you chochma, I will teach you bina. So we see a'alefcha from the expression of elef, teaching Alpayim, 2 aleph switch to the a'alefcha chochma and the a'alefcha bina.
And what does Alefcha mean?
I will teach you. So that's how we come to. So again,
Why is it grammatically connected to 1,000 in the Shorish?
it's a good question. No, but I say that
Does see the
that's the way it says. A'alefcha chochma, a'alefcha bina. If you look at the Bar Mitzvah Maamar, every kid at the Bar Mitzvah, this is what he says. Torah is chochma, as it says, a'alefcha chochma, a'alefcha bina.
1,000 is the same as 1. 1,000 is just a fuller expression of 1.
Yeah, but the question is why after 1,000, why not 100?
Why
You know,
teach that? Why does the word elef connote teaching?
Okay,
there's no connection. There's no root.
I'm sure if we delve into it a little deeper, we'll get that as well. If you want, I can check that out. But let's move on a little bit for the moment. So Torah is connected to Meichen, Chochma and Bina. That's Yom Yom. The world is connected to Midas. Chesed Gvura Tiferes Netzach Yisrael. Sheishes Yomim Osa Hashem Es Hashemayim V'Sa'aretz. The Midas. Says the Rebbe that in this pasuk in Mishlei, the pasuk actually enumerates 5 aspects in connection to Torah. Starts off, V'Eheya Etzli Amen. I will be, as the Rebbe explained, that even though grammatically here we're talking about the Vav HaHipuch, it means and I was, but the Zohar clearly states that it's a reference to the future, that in the future time it'll be Amen, Hashem's nursling, Torah as a nursling beside Hashem, one Nekuda. The next one of Shashuyim Yom Yom, the one we're discussing now, Torah as a delight, Yom Yom. Zachek is the fun of Torah playing before him, Hashem, at all times. The fourth nekuda, misachekes b'tevel artze, playing in the habitable world of Hashem, Hashem's habitable world. V'shashua yes b'nei Adam, and my delights with the children of man. So then I went into the discussion where we were talking about these 5 points in Torah is going in ascending order or descending order. And the Rebbe concluded that it goes in descending order, meaning Amoin would be the highest. Torah as a nursling would be the highest nekuda. Shashuim is the second one. So the question was, why do Chazal highlight the second component of Torah rather than the first? Should have focused in on Amoin. Why on Shashuim? So the Rebbe went into a pretty detailed description of the connection between Torah and Tainug. At every level, in other words, he started off by saying, so he said like this, Amain refers to Torah at the level of Atzmos, the very essence of Hashem. Torah at its highest level, as it is with Hashem himself at the very essence, before any expressions coming forward out of Hashem. Then you have Shashuim. What's Shashuim? Shashuim is the light. So what did we say? It's Yom Yom. We're talking about Torah at the level of Chochmah. So how does Shashuim come into it? In the order of Sfiris, you have the 10 Sfiris, Chochmah bin Adas, the intellectual aspects of the Sfiris, and then you have the emotional aspects of the Sfiris, from Chesed through to Malchus, right? Beyond Moichim, beyond the intellectual aspects of the Sfiris, of the attributes, you have Rotzen and Tainug, which is generally Chitzainis HaKeser and Pnimius HaKeser, the external aspect of Keser, of the crown, and the internal aspect of the crown. Tainug is the internal aspect of the crown, which is beyond the 10 Sfiris. So the Rebbe asked, if we're talking about Yom Yom, Torah at the level of what? Chochmah and Bina, what's Misachekes? What's Shashuyim? Shashuyim is connected to Tainug. Delight. That's Tainug, that's not Chochmah and Bina. So the Rebbe explained that although we say that Torah is connected to Chochmah and to Bina, and as we say, Oiraisa me Chochmah nafkes, Torah comes out from Chochmah, it means that Chochmah and Bina reveal Torah. But Torah is rooted much higher. So in Sfiris, when we talk about the levels of Giluyim, of revelations, we're talking, the first point is what? Is Tainug. The innermost dimension of what? Of Keser. So Torah reveals that which is, Chochmah and Bina reveals that which is beyond it. Which is what? It reveals Pnimis HaKeser. So when you say Torah as Chochmah and Bina, Yom Yom, it's still appropriate to say Sha'ashuyim, delight, because it reveals the delight of Torah. And that's why he brought the Maamar Chazal that Rabbi Abo found a new Tosefta, a new Braiser, a new Mishnah. His face became radiant with a gold color. Tainug. So we see Torah connected to Tainug. Then he went into a whole discussion of Bina. That in Bina, Chazal, I don't want to go through in detail because we learned it already. You can listen online. Bina, that the revelation of Bina, the revelation of Tainug is in Bina. His Galus Tainug in Bina. He quoted from the passage of Abed Levi, who Levi is in the Kavas Mel. Kohen is Isha Chesed. Kohen is on the right line. So Chochmah, Chesed, and Netzach are on the right. Bina, Gvura, and Hoid are on the left. Levi is Kohen is Chesed, Levi is Gvura. If you go a level higher, Kohen would be Chochmah, Levi would be Bina. In the pasuk it says Va'avad HaLevi Hu. Concerning the Leviim guarding the Beis Hamikdash, it says that the Levi should do his service in order to guard the Mishkan, so that the Jewish people will not come to trespass when they're not allowed to, because if they do, they can die. So the pasuk says Va'avad HaLevi Hu, and the Levi will do his work. It could have easily said without the Hu. State in Kabbalah that Hu is a reference to Atik, the inner dimension of Keser, and the Avedas HaLeviim reveals Atik. So we see that again, the left Kav, which is Bina, Gvura, so on and so forth, is connected to what? To Atik. The bottom line is that these levels express Tainug. So even though we're talking about Chochmah and Bina in the intellectual, the level, Torah at the level of Chochmah and Bina, but we're talking in that revelation of Chochmah and Bina, you find what? The expression of Tainug. So therefore, when you say Yom Yom, it makes sense to say Shashuyim. Also, when we talk about a lower level, he said the next aspect of the pasuk, Misachek is the fun of Bechol Eis, refers to Torah at the level of Midas, Misachekis b'tevel artzei refers to Torah at the level of Malchus, and then V'shashua yes b'nei Adam refers to Torah as it is revealed through the human being's behavior, learning and davening, and so on and so forth.
Half past. 8:30. Wasn't quarter past? Okay, good. Sorry, excuse me.
So what's the vort? The vort is, even though we're talking about all these different levels, level at Torah at the level of Chacham and Bina, Torah at the level of Midas, Torah at the level of Malchus, Torah at the level as it finds expression in the behavior and the learning of the human being, it makes sense in all of these to say Shashuim, an element of delight, playing, delight, and so on and so forth, which means all expressions of Torah from its source. However, when we come to the last one, Torah as it manifests itself in the elements of Agashmi, in this physical world, in learning and fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs of a Jew, over there it says V'sha'ashuai, my delights, Hashem's delight. We go back to what? To Omain. Torah at the very highest level, the first aspect that the pasuk enumerates. Torah as it is at the level of Atzmos and Mahus together with the Eibishter himself. Where does that find expression? That level finds expression only where, as b'nei Adam, when a Yid learns and fulfills Torah mitzvahs. So the very highest levels of Torah finds expression dafka where, or rather Torah as it is beyond all levels. Torah as it is with Hashem himself finds expression specifically in the lowest aspect. So therefore that is why Chazal focus in on the second dimension, because they're talking about Torah where it starts from Tainuk. Omain is beyond reach unless you come to the lowest level. So the first point of entry is Shashuim Yom Yom, and you go from level to level to level until you come to the very lowest one, and that connects you back to the very highest one, which couldn't find expression before. That is, in a nutshell, what the Rebbe said until now. So, Perek Dalet, Eis Dalet, page Sadik Vav. Obir Ha'inyan, to explain this more, the Hindi Yadua, it is known, Shebam Shachas Elokus Bechlal Yeshnei Efanim, that in the drawing down of godliness, generally there are two modes, Eir Yashar, Ve'er Chayzer, a direct light and a returning light. We touched upon this in one of the previous Maamarim. In brief, before we go on, State in Kisvei Arizal, it says like this, that when Hashem created the Seder Hishtalshemus, the order of the chain of descent, the order that governs the whole of existence, so we know that generally, like we just enumerated, you have the Eidos Makifim, right? The divine lights, the divine energies that hover, that surround existence, and then you have the Eidos Pnimim, the internal lights. The Eidos Makifim are like Tainug and Rotzen, like we just mentioned, Keser, for example, or even more generally, Eidos Seviv, right? And then you have Eidos Pnimim. The 10 spheres are Eidos Pnimim internal lights. They have an Eir, which is tailored to the Keli, and that's the way generally Seder Shtalshlus is run. So we know that the higher level is higher, the first level is higher. For example, Chochmah is the highest level, Bina is the next level, Das is lower, and so on and so forth, until you come to Malchus. That's Eir Yashar, where the higher one has more revelation, greater divine energy, and the lower one contracts and becomes reduced. That's Eir Yashar, direct light. Steht in Kisvei Arizal that when Hashem finished the Seder Shtalshemus, he came to Malchus, he created a new Eir. It's called Eir Chayzer, where the highest level manifests itself in Malchus. The next level, the second strong level, manifests itself in Yesod. The third one in Hod. The fourth one. So in other words, upside down, right? So you have one Shiur coming down Eir Yashar, where it becomes reduced as you descend. Eir Chayzer means it becomes reduced as you ascend. So he went down and then he made a U-turn and started the same process, but just the other way around.
So just to clarify that, when it gets down the bottom, it's at its lowest. And when you say it goes up again, it increases or becomes even lower and lower.
No. He starts the process again from the bottom.
It reverses.
It reverses.
Reversing, becoming higher as it goes up
Yeah,
again?
lower. So in Malchus, you'll find expression of. So, for example, Malchus all of a sudden becomes, let's say, Chochmah. It's like turning Seder Shtalshemus upside down, but not that Chochmah now is at the bottom. Malchus now has the highest Nikud in it. So, but it's two modes. They are two modes of the revelation of Getlichkeit. Normally, what's invoked is Eir Yashar. There are circumstances where you can trigger Er Chezer, Bal Tshuva, etc., etc. Right? So a tzaddik is Er Yosher, a Bal Tshuva is Er Chezer. Right? So let's see how the Rebbe explains it here in connection to Torah. So b'meila, in the drawing down of godliness, generally there are two modes: Er Yosher ve'er Chezer, a direct light and a returning light. V'cheinu gam b'limud Torah. This we also find in the learning of Torah. Sheyeshnei limud Torah b'efim der Yosher. There's a way of learning Torah in a mode of Er Yosher, a direct light. What does that mean? Shalei with the maven. You learn and you understand. You open the text and you segate. You connect with what it says. You understand what it says. But then you have a limud b'efim der Chezer. There's learning in a mode of the returning light. What does that mean? When you learn and you don't understand. Generally, Er Chezer is triggered when there's a blockage, and you have to invoke a deeper koyach. It's like, for example, when a person finds himself in a state of danger, he will suddenly find in him abilities and strengths that he wasn't consciously aware that he has. What happened? Where did that come from? It's always there. It's latent, but it's always there. And it's triggered through a difficulty. Similarly, when you're learning, when one learns and doesn't understand, what happens? Or he's learning the text and he has questions from another place of what he learned someplace else. And he overpowers these blockages, these concealments, and the questions. That's learning b'derech Er Chezer. Learning b'der Yosher is you learn and you understand. Learning b'derech Er Chezer means you learn and you don't understand and you overcome those hindrances. And you delve down to what it means. This is the difference between the Yerushalmi Talmud and the Babylonian Talmud. The style of the Talmud Yerushalmi is fundamentally different than the style of the Talmud Bavli. In the Talmud Yerushalmi, there aren't an abundance of questions, and a lengthy discussion, and questions and answers. It's learning in the mode of direct light. The Talmud Bavli, yesh be'kushis v'chulu. In Talmud Bavli, you open a Gemara, there's one question, there's another question. You give an answer, there's a refutation. And you can go on and on and on until you get to the bottom line. Maamar Azal, as the Talmud itself says, in Masechta Sanhedrin, the Machshakim Hashivani, in Eicha, it says, the Machshakim Hashivani, you have sat me in the dark. So the Talmud does mean you have sat me in the dark. So the Chazal say, Zu Talmudish al Babel. This is a reference to the Babylonian Talmud. Why is it dark? Because there are blockages. So learning Talmud Bavli is learning in the mode of a returning light. Er Chezer. Yerushalmi is Er Yosher. Bavli is Er Chezer. V'hinei Yodua shalimud b'derech Er Chezer magia l'mayla ben arech v'limud Er Yosher. It is known that the learning in a mode of a returning light reaches way beyond not just beyond, but completely beyond the learning of Er Yosher, of a direct mode. Like similar to what we find concerning the great quality of learning Talmud Yerushalmi over the learning of Talmud Bavli, to such an extent, Reb Zera, who is one of the foremost Amiraim, Talmudic scholars, he learned Talmud Bavli. He's a member of the school that learned Bavli. At one point, he started learning Talmud Yerushalmi, and he fasted 100 fasts in order to forget the Babylonian Talmud. Why did he have to forget? when you go from one level to the next level, but the higher level is a quantum leap relative to the previous level hinders your advance. If the advance is step by step, then you need a lower step in order to reach the higher step. But if you want to go from the lower level to the higher level, but when the higher level is limitlessly greater, infinitely greater than the previous level hinders you. For example, the marshal that we brought many times is the concept of a seed. If you want a seed to grow, the seed has to rot away completely. If it retains any of its original texture or structure, nothing will grow. It won't germinate. So because Talmud Yerushalmi is so infinitely greater than what the Talmud Bavli, Reb Zera fasted 100 fasts in order to forget Talmud Bavli. From this is understood, the Talmud Bavli is infinitely greater than what? Than Talmud Yerushalmi in level. Because if the ascent from Talmud Bavli the Babylonian Talmud, to the Yerushalmi Talmud, would have been in an orderly way. In other words, one step leads to the next one, and so on and so forth. He wouldn't have to forget the Babylonian Talmud in order to learn the Yerushalmi Talmud. Since in order to learn the Yerushalmi Talmud, he needed to forget the impression of Talmud Bavli. How do you move on this? From this is understood. This is a limitless, a quantum leap relative to the previous level. So from this is understood also the special quality that Talmud Yerushalmi possesses over Talmud Bavli. That what? In other words, conversely, he had to forget Talmud Bavli in order for what? To learn Talmud Yerushalmi. But there must be an element in Talmud Bavli that the Talmud Yerushalmi does not possess. What is that? The learning of Chezer. The learning in the returning mode, as we said before, that you delve in deeply through these blockages. So if there's a quantum distance between Talmud Bavli and Talmud Yerushalmi, it works both ways. The quality that Yerushalmi possesses over Talmud Bavli is infinitely greater, but similarly, the other way around, there's a maila, there's a special quality that the Bavli possesses over Yerushalmi, which is, as we mentioned before, the learning in the returning mode, which allows you to trigger elements that didn't exist before when you overcome difficulties. So that must be also infinitely greater than what? Than the Talmud Yerushalmi, which does not possess that particular element.
So is one returning and learning, and the other one learning and returning, or is that too simple?
One is learning in a direct way, and one is learning in a returning way. Returning is a borrowed term, so to speak. Well, it's not a borrowed term, but it means learning through overcoming obstacles. One is learning directly without any obstacles. You just learn. When there's an obstacle, when there's a problem, it causes you to delve deeper into that point. When you're learning directly, sometimes, in simple terms, you run the danger of learning it superficially. I understand. You're foreign. You go. When there's a problem and you have to discuss and it's challenged and so on and so forth, you have to crystallize. So you delve much deeper into what you're learning. The next part, the Rebbe is going to explain that in the returning mode of learning, there are another two dimensions, and that will leave a mitzvah for tomorrow.